Aloha, good morning, and welcome to ThinkTechHawaii.com. My name is Jeff James, and I'm the host of today's show, The Military in Hawaii. And my guest today is Captain Brian Osgood, who is the Pacific Fleet Submarine Force Maintenance Officer. Welcome, Brian. Glad to have you here.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, so Brian and I go back quite a ways. Previous to his job at Submarine Forces Pacific, he was the Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard commander when I was the base commander. And so he was my largest tenant. I would say my largest pain in the butt, not really. So we go back a while, and he's now at the Sub 4, overseeing maintenance on the submarine. So Brian, what got you into the submarine force? I mean, I was a ship driver, and that's a very natural thing because everybody wants to be on ships. But what would compel somebody to go to a submarine?
So that's a great question. Thanks for having me again. It's nice to get out of the office. So my journey in the Navy goes back into the 80s, like us old guys do.
Yep.
So when I was in high school, I had to make a decision about what I wanted to do. So science and engineering and math, there were always things that interested me. So I went to University of South Florida to do engineering. But behind that was my big passion, which was to play baseball for the Phillies.
Oh.
Which
one?
Yeah, so I had a scholarship to go to USF play baseball, and that was awesome. Of course, it was a great college thing to do. I never made it to the Phillies. I offered to pay them to let me play, and they said I didn't pay them enough.
Yeah.
But anyway, so along that path, I was getting an engineering degree. So at the time, this is the mid-'80s, Navy was building. We were working towards that 600-ship Navy, and I got recruited to join the nuclear power program. So I thought about that for a little while, and it was a great program. They brought you in when you were still in college. You made good grades. You had to be an engineer. And they said, well, look, you can be an engineer, and you sit behind a desk somewhere, or you can go on a submarine, and you can run a reactor, and you can poke holes in the ocean, and you can carry around big weapons and things. I said, wow. I said, that sounds awesome.
Well, when I was in college in ROTC, I didn't have quite that same offering. The nuclear program did not come knocking on my door. I knocked on their door, and they said, thanks, but no thanks. So, you obviously did well in college. So everybody that goes onto the subforce, well, all the line officers have to go through nuclear power training, correct?
Correct.
So what's that like? I mean, what's the school like? How long is it? How hard is it?
So there's a fundamental approach, and so the submarine program aligns under naval reactors. So the concept is basically to train the wardroom to understand how to maintain and operate the ship. And maintenance and operation of the reactor is frontmost to what we need to do in submarine force. So the pipeline to get to your first submarine walks you right through a detailed understanding of reactor principles, reactor operations, and then of course the hands-on and a prototype, so that you can actually understand how to operate the reactor, not just under normal underway operations, but in those events of a casualty, we are trained to take care of the ship, we're trained to take care of the reactor from a maintenance and engineering perspective before they give us the keys to drive the ship.
Okay, so you came in as an officer and went through this training, but what about the technicians and the enlisted force? Do they go through a similar type of training?
Yes, they do.
Without a college education, they go to do this?
So there's what we call power school.
Okay.
So that's the nuts and bolts of how the reactor works, the systems work, and what the systems are intended to do, and how we design a reactor plant and how we operate it. And then, of course, they go to a prototype training as well. So that is a little different than the surface side. Now, as the sailors get into the force, they still go through the A school training and the C school training, but to serve on submarines or to serve in the engineering plant on a nuclear submarine, they have very specific training.
So you said A school and C school, is that like apprentice and journeyman type training for a particular technology or a skill set?
Yes. So when you think about what we do at sea, you have your mechanics, you have your electricians, you have your reactor controls technicians, and then you have in a nuclear submarine your engineered laboratory technicians. We call them your rad contacts. So the guys that monitor the plant.
Yeah. Okay. So how long was the school? I mean, was it hard? I mean, you went to college, you had an engineering degree. Were they basically teaching what you already knew, or was this all new, or was it the same stuff but with a Navy smell and taste to it?
I would say that some of the classroom training had overlaps. So you had to go through, make sure you understood electrical theory, mechanical theory, but the reactor plant systems and the detailed knowledge of reactor physics was different. So I enjoyed it. It was hard. So they didn't send you to power school, just kind of sit around and have fun in Orlando. Because in Orlando
Did everybody have fun?
Some of us had fun a little bit. Some of us had more fun than others.
Aren't those the guys that are on like ships now?
So the folks that went there also went to carriers.
Yeah.
So I can't discount those guys, that surface guys went to carriers and the nuclear plants on the surface.
Okay, so after you go through this in-depth, detailed nuclear power training, you go to a submarine. So what was that like being on a submarine?
So there was a step between the classroom training and the prototype. So we have a couple different prototypes, and right now we've built prototypes in South Carolina. So that's where pretty much all of our training goes through South Carolina right now. And the power plants, or the prototypes, are designed to look and feel like the power plants when you get to your ships. So the pipeline is supposed to last a year, give or take a year and a half, and then you get to your first submarine, and then you got to qualify all over again. So you stand and you qualify your watches like engineering officer of the watch, officer of the deck, and then your import watches.
So are all the power plants the same? I mean, we've got, I'm trying to think now, like 3 or 4 classes of submarines. Do they all use basically the same plant? Because you all go through the same school, or are there minor differences, or is it all just the same in general?
To do justice to naval reactors, they are significantly different.
Okay.
But from the outside, they operate all the same. They're basically pressurized water reactors.
Okay, yeah.
And primary system and secondary system. So sailors can go from one plant to another, learn the differences in how the plants operate, and then move between the forces. So we have Trident submarines, which have a different plant. We have the Virginia-class submarine, which is new, which is a different plant. And then we have the 688s, which are the old fast-attack submarines that have a different plant as well.
Okay. So how much time did you spend on the submarines, I mean, like as a submariner? Because I know that you transitioned into maintenance, but what was your operational time,
So when I came into the Navy in 1986, as I said, Reagan was building up the force. We were building a lot of submarines. So my first tour started when I got to my first boat in 1988. I spent 3 years on the John C. Calhoun, ballistic missile submarine out of Kings Bay. And back then we were building a lot of the 688 class submarine. So I did a junior officer split tour with 36 months in a Calhoun. Then I went and I did new construction on the USS Hampton. So I spent 14 months as a senior JO, kind of helping from a ship's force and Navy perspective, delivering USS Hampton.
So was it that time on the construction of the Hampton, that was probably like in a shipyard, right?
Yes.
Is that what got you interested in the maintenance side? I mean, what drove you out of the submarine operational force and into submarine maintenance?
So that's a great question too. There's 2 parts to that. I thought it was fascinating to see how the Navy, through the private sector, actually builds a submarine. So I got to touch a reactor plant before it had ever been operated. So it was kind of cool to see how we actually build a plant, how we test a plant, how we started up for the first time. So that was a great experience. But at the same time, as Reagan was building up the Navy for the 600 ship fleet, in 1989, the Cold War came to an end.
Berlin Wall came down.
The Berlin Wall came down. So we had a choice as a country. We decided to cash in the peace dividend, and we downsized the Navy. So we curtailed a couple of the other building programs. Seawolf was one of those that was supposed to be, I think, a 40-ship submarine class, and we essentially have 3. So we went this way, and then we went this way. So there were options for me to move from where I was in the operational force into the sustainment force.
Okay, that makes sense. You kind of watched the Navy wax and wane. You saw better opportunity on the maintenance side because the operational side was constricting and maintenance was going to be there, right?
Right. We built a fleet of these 688 submarines, you know, 3 a year for several years. And then the life cycle of a submarine, you go through different major phases of maintenance, modernization, depot overhauls, and of course, most of the 68 submarines had to be refueled.
So what's involved in a refueling? I mean, I'm a ship guy. I've heard the term, but I've never actually seen it. They cut a hole in the side of the ship and pull the reactor out and stick a new one in there? Or?
It's not quite that simple. So when you think about nuclear power in the private sector for power generation, it's very stable. So they refuel their plants very fast. But our submarines and our plants are designed to operate under very arduous conditions under battle.
Yeah.
So as you think about the conditions of a submarine, how they have to operate, the reliability reactor, when we build that, we build it to last. So when we refuel, it takes a long time to refuel it. Fundamentally, we cut a hole in the top of the submarine, and then we basically cut the top off of the pressure vessel, and then we pull the fuel out and put new fuel in, fill the plant back up, and start up again.
Okay.
It's that easy, Jeff.
That sounds pretty easy. I mean,
That's
kind of like,
pretty easy.
Well, you know, I'll tell you on a gas turbine powered ship, which is basically a ship that's got an airplane engine inside of it, you can literally change out the engine in about a day with just the ship's force. I mean, it's designed to just pull one out, you know, and swap it out. But I would imagine it takes more than a day to cut the hole, open the pressure vessel, and refuel. I mean, I think when I think about like the nuclear power on carriers when they go in for a refueling, I mean, that's years, I think. And that's measured in terms of years. Is a submarine refueling measured in terms of years as well?
So when we bring a submarine to refuel, we also overhaul it. So the refueling overhauls were a couple years. But I want to stress this point. The Naval Reactors program is very, very safe. So the time that we take is about protecting the sailors and about protecting the workers. And by extension, to protect everybody else. So not saying it's an overly conservative program, but the program is centered on critical thinking, safety, and then concern for the individual.
Okay. All right. Roger that. So you manage the maintenance of submarines now, and as we have rebalanced the military to the Pacific, you know, as I've observed, I think they said it was going to be a 60-40 split. 60% of the forces will be in the Pacific, 40% in the Atlantic. And in my last position, you know, when I would go out on the waterfront and count the number of gray holes and the black holes, which would be the submarines, I think at last count it was about 19 submarines that were based in Pearl Harbor. And so, you know, I think we have like 50 in the whole Navy, right? Roughly 50 fast attack,
right?
Around that, something like that. So we have almost 40% of the fast attack fleet based in Pearl Harbor.
20 out of 50 do higher order math. So when, but I think about, so think about it this way. Don't think about it just at Pearl Harbor. So there's two ports that have large concentration of submarines. Pearl Harbor and Groton, Connecticut. So they're comparable with about 19, 20 at any given time submarines. But when we talk about this 60-40 split, we also talk about the forward deployed ships and the forward deployed submarines. So we have submarines up in Bangor, Washington. We have submarines in San Diego. We have submarines home ported at Pearl, and we also have submarines home ported in Guam.
So they're all over the Pacific.
They're all over the Pacific.
Okay, Brian, hold that thought. We're gonna take a quick break. Again, you're watching ThinkTechHawaii.com live. This is Jeff James with the military in Hawaii. We'll be right.
You're watching Think Tech Hawaii, offering lifelong learning from passionate hosts and fascinating guests ready to explore and explain Hawaii's place in the 21st century. Great content for Hawaii from Think Tech.
Aloha, this is Reg Baker. I'm the host of Business in Hawaii. We air every Thursday at 2 o'clock on ThinkTechHawaii.com. We broadcast from the ThinkTech studios in downtown Honolulu, and we talk about positive and successful companies in Hawaii. People that have been successful despite the obstacles. They all have a good story to tell. Hopefully we'll see you on Thursday at 2 o'clock. Aloha.
Aloha, I'm Kirsten Baumgart-Turner, and I'm fortunate to be able to host Sustainable Hawaii at thinktechhawaii.com. I hope you'll join in with us every Tuesday from 12 noon to 1 p.m. to see the interesting people we have to share with you their information. Aloha.
Things about the Pacific.
Aloha, good morning. My name is Jeff James. I'm the host today of thinktechhawaii.com. Our show is The Military in Hawaii, and our guest is Captain Brian Osgood, the Submarine Force Pacific Fleet Maintenance Officer. Brian, welcome, and thanks again for being here. Before we went on break, we were talking about where we had submarines in the Pacific dispersed to, and in your role as the maintenance officer, where do you guys do maintenance? Do you do it everywhere in the Pacific? Do you do it in Guam? Do you do it in Bangor? Do you do it in San Diego? Or is it all just centralized at the shipyard here?
So we were talking about the 60-40 split. So if you're going to split the force and you're going to deploy the force, you have to sustain it. And that's the great thing about our Navy, is that we can forward deploy ships and we can take care of them. So in the Pacific, as compared to the land side, not dissing my land brothers.
I would.
You would?
It's cold and there's nothing going on there. But anyways.
We do maintenance in the Northwest. So there's Puget Sound Naval Shipyard, and there's the base at Bangor. So we do work on submarines there. So we do work on submarines in San Diego, and we do work on submarines at Pearl, and we do work on submarines in Guam. Now those are the home ported places. We also do maintenance forward deployed basically wherever in the Pacific that submarines go, because on the Pacific side, we have the two remaining U.S. tenders, submarine tenders.
Okay.
And they're home ported in Guam.
So they're like a little mini maintenance capable vessel? Is that how you would describe a tender?
I wouldn't call it mini.
Okay. Well, they're big. I mean, I've
They're
seen
big.
them. But like relative to a shore-based maintenance organization, it's all that shore-based stuff crammed into a ship.
Yes.
Yeah.
So for the audience, you know, we have the what's called O-level maintenance that ship's force does underway on the ships.
So that'd be kind of like if you have a car, O-level
Right.
would be you changing your own oil at home
Right.
in a very environmentally conservative and appropriate manner, not dumping it down the drain.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly.
All right.
And then your next level would be your intermediate maintenance, where you bring the car in for a tune-up, maybe change the coolant, some of those things. And then the next step would be the depot, where you bring the car in, you take the doors off, you take everything off, and you refurbish all the metals and maybe change out the engine. And
So
do some
that
of
depot level would be what you do at the shipyard, right?
Yes.
Okay, so as we, you know, if you just joined us, or if you heard before, Brian was previously the shipyard commander at Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard, back when I was the base commander at the Joint Base. And so, you know, we worked together in that capacity for, you were there, okay, I had 3 years. You were there for 4 years at the
4 years.
shipyard though, right? So that's a long time to be in command. Were you the longest standing shipyard commander?
You know, I didn't quite ask that question, but I looked at a wall, and there's only one other Pearl Harbor commander that had been 4 years.
Was that
So-
during World War II?
Yeah, it was in that time frame.
Wow. Well,
So-
that's pretty good. I mean, obviously we're doing good work.
I'm not going to compare myself to World War II and the challenges the shipyard had back then.
Well, I mean, didn't they fix an aircraft carrier in 3 days and send it back out to war? It
They
takes
did.
longer now, but I would say that actually brings us to another good point, which is, you know, if you think about the technology that we have today relative to what we had maybe back, you know, 20, 30, even 40 or 50, 60, 70 years ago, I mean, it's exponentially more complex. And so, you know, what does it take for a workforce? Because it's not necessarily sailors that are doing this work at the shipyard. I mean, you know, I lived on the base for a long time, and it was mostly civilian. So how do you grow a workforce like that? And how does somebody become part of that workforce?
I may sound a little biased here, but the shipyard's a fascinating place. It's fascinating. And the folks who work in the shipyard are some of the most incredible people that you'll ever meet. The mission of the shipyard, depot overhaul and repair of nuclear-powered submarines, is one of the hardest things I've ever done. But it's also one of the most rewarding. And to take that industrial might and move it into the Pacific and park it on an island and grow your own workforce, that's what we do here in Hawaii.
Yep.
The shipyard is the largest industrial employer in Hawaii, and we're the largest employer of engineers in the state.
So when you say the largest industrial employer, I mean, what are we talking? You've got 100 people, 200, 2,000? I know the answer, I'm just asking. I roughly know, I think, I don't know.
Well, in my tenure, we peaked at probably just over 5,000.
Yeah.
It was essentially about 4,546 civilians and about 500, 600 sailors.
Yeah, so where does that workforce come from? Is that an indigenous, the island of Oahu produces those folks, or do they come from the mainland? Or do you have some way of, I don't know, growing that workforce? Because that's a lot of people and that's a lot of hard work.
So there's two parts to that. I think that one of the sources of pride that we have is that we grow our own workforce. We have one of the most successful apprentice programs in the Navy. It's comparable to the other shipyards.
Yep.
But we bring in anywhere between, I'll say, 100 to 200 apprentices a year. These are great careers for those who can qualify. We're federal government working on nuclear submarines, so there are people that do not qualify for that kind of work. But when you come to us and say, I am ready to be part of that workforce, it's a commitment to be part of something bigger than themselves. And we train them and we bring them into the Shipyard Ohana.
Yeah, so I've been to a couple. I remember going to a graduation ceremony for the shipyard apprentices. Mm-hmm. And what kind of struck me was how long the apprenticeship program is. It's not like you come in for 6 months. I mean, if I recall correctly, is it a couple of years?
It's a 4-year program. 4
years, yeah, that's a long time. That's a commitment. That's like, and do you have to have, requisite college behind you or anything like that? Or do you take people that just have high school diplomas? I mean, what does it take to get into that program?
So it's a competitive process. You don't have to have previous college. You have to have a willingness to be part of the shipyard. And then you have to have a good, an academic record from high school. Yeah. But it is a competitive process. But once you join the apprentice program, there's a 2-year degree that we have coupled with the community college system. So we train you in the mathematics and some of the other trade skills that you would get at a community college. Mm-hmm. So you get a 2-year degree, and then of course you get a lot of the hands-on training to understand how to do some of the most unique jobs on the planet. All the trades, from welding to inside machine shop stuff to working inside submarine on various things. All the trades.
Well, when you think about the trades, I mean, you could go work for Chrysler and be a welder. Mm-hmm. But my guess is that it's a lot different being a welder on a submarine, that's going to be subjected to whatever the pressure is based on the depth that they go to. So, how do you train somebody to be that good? Do you have a QA, QC program? Do you do that with the folks there? Is it the Navy that's inspecting that? Or is it, is it just is it the folks there that you hire that are doing the QA and the quality control and making sure that everything is right?
So let me say it this way. The success of the Naval Nuclear Propulsion Program is founded in the integrity of the people. So we listen to the voice of the deck plate, but we also empower the voice of the deck plate. So mechanics, not only do you do the work, we tell you why you're doing the work, and we'll also make you responsible for your work. So the idea of first-time quality is embedded in each and every mechanic that we have in the shipyard.
Wow.
And engineers too. So the other part of growing our own workforce is the partnership that we have with University of Hawaii, per se.
Well, is the apprenticeship program, you accredit people so they end up with some sort of a formal academic diploma through that program. And is that through the University of Hawaii or through the community college system that's associated with the UH?
So let's go back to the apprentice program. So the 4-year for the trades. In the 4 years, you get a 2-year degree. That's a degree. And after 4 years, you basically graduate with a certificate from the U.S. Department of Labor. So you've basically moved through the Department of Labor system to become an apprentice. And you certify as a mechanic.
Okay.
So you complete the apprentice program. And that is a U.S. Department of Labor program. executed by the shipyard.
So you've got over 5,000 people working there. What's your turnover rate? I mean, because it sounds like it takes a lot to get into the shipyard. There's a huge investment in the workforce. So do you have a low turnover rate? I really have not looked at that, so I really have no idea. But my guess would be you have low turnover.
The turnover rate is low. I think the turnover rate is low for a couple reasons. Shipyard jobs are great. You can't go to a single organization, biased here, in Hawaii and get as many different opportunities to go do different things in a career. You move from, being a deck plate mechanic into supervision. We have our own quality programs. We have our own, we take our own cranes, lifting and handling. And I can list them all, I don't want to insult anybody. So we have our trades, we have engineering, we have QA, we have safety, and then we have business and strategic planning. We have everything.
Everything, yeah.
Everything.
Logistics.
A depot naval ship.
Transportation.
Yeah.
Fire and emergency services.
And if only we got better support from the base commander,
I know you did a couple years ago. I'm sure you're getting the same, well, your successor is getting the same thing today.
So I was talking about the engineers. So we are a field activity for Naval Sea Systems Command, NAVSEA. And what we do is based on technical authority. And so to describe that very simply, a mechanic just doesn't go and do work. A mechanic follows a rigorously designed technical instruction from the principles of how the ship and the submarine were put together and how they are engineered to be repaired. Mm-hmm. So in the process of the quality that you're talking about, each one of the mechanics understands that I do work in accordance with an instruction. I record when I complete those steps. And then, of course, at the end, I test my work. And so all that is required to certify the systems to allow our submarines to go to sea. So
there's no like freelance welding or electronic technicians just testing things out?
No.
Okay, I didn't think so, but I thought I would just ask the question. So the thing that I find fascinating about the shipyard, during the tours that you gave me and in my time when I was back in the fleet on a ship there, is the dry docks. There's, I guess you count 4 dry docks, right? 4 dry docks, but
yes,
they were built way back when, like in the early 1900s. I know one was built in 1913, because isn't that the one that collapsed, dry dock 1?
Yes. So there's 4
So why
dry
did it
docks.
collapse?
There's legends about that. I'm not going to go into the legends of what happened in Dry Dock 1.
But
they went back and they
pay
fixed
homage
it.
to the,
Yes.
the shark god,
Yes.
right? Yep.
They made that mistake and they fixed that. And
So how do we fix that now? I mean, what happens now? I think this is very interesting to me. We don't commission a building, we don't open a facility, we don't renovate something without a traditional Hawaiian blessing to pay homage to the gods of Hawaii, if you will.
And we have, for every groundbreaking we have a ceremonial event.
Yeah.
In great Hawaiian tradition.
Based upon, or premised principally because of that collapse. And when they asked, when the architects and the engineers got together and tried to figure it out, they might have come up with a scientific solution, but the Hawaiians were very clear to say it's because you were not respectful to what was going on there.
Right, so the Navy here and the shipyard is part of Hawaii.
Well, I'm with you, I understand that.
We have, Hawaiian culture is embedded in what we do on a day-to-day basis.
Well, isn't it emblazoned on one of the buildings?
It is.
I mean, that's the saying, no ko'oi, right?
No ko'oi shipyard.
Nothing finer, no finer.
Mm-hmm. Only the best.
Yep, only the best, okay. Yeah, so speaking of the dry docks, okay, they were constructed back in the early 1900s, and is that the same dry docks that are being used today? I mean, they look the same to me. It doesn't look like there's much difference.
Right, they are. So this month is Shipyard's anniversary. We were coming off base and we saw the sign that says Happy Birthday Shipyard. Yep. So when we, 2008, 108. 108. So the shipyard had 1 dry dock built in those early 1900 days. And that was dry dock 1. Back when the shipyard was designed, it was designed to build or to maintain large capital ships. And the way that we took care of large capital ships in those days is we'd cut big holes in them, we'd pull all the parts off, we'd bring them to the shops, we'd fix it all, and then we'd put all of it back together.
But we don't do that the same way today because ships are quite complex. And
Right.
so let's hold that thought.
Hold.
And we'll come back to that because that's an interesting thought. I like to continue with that. Again, my name's Jeff James. This is ThinkTechHawaii.com, the military in Hawaii, and we're going to take a short break. We'll be right back.
Hi, aloha. My name is Chris Leatham, and I host a show called The Economy and You. The show plays every Wednesday at noon, and on my show, I bring on guests who are interested or working in the technology space. And so I'd like you to come and watch the show and learn with me about all the sort of exciting things that we're doing in Hawaii to build and grow our economy ecosystem. So I'd like to say aloha, and I look forward to seeing you on the show. Thank you.
Aloha, how you doing? Welcome to Hibachi Talk. Gordo the Texar here. We're here every Friday from 1 o'clock till about 1:45, and we talk tech with many, many great guests. So I got Andrew, the security guy who helps me co-host, and I got Papi Chulo who comes in once in a while to help us through the show. So please come join Hibachi Talk every Friday. Angus will be here too. So remember, like we say at the end of every show, how you doing?
Aloha and welcome back to ThinkTechHawaii.com. I'm your host, Jeff James. Today's show is the military in Hawaii, and our guest is Captain Brian Osgood, the Force Maintenance Officer for Submarine Forces Pacific. Brian, in the last segment, we were talking about the dry docks at Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard and the way maintenance was done on ships back when those dry docks were built back in the early 1900s. Cut a hole in the side of the ship, pull the gear out, refurbish it, and stick it back in. But obviously, that's not the way we do maintenance today necessarily. So, you know, how does it happen today? Because these are still the same dry docks, you know, almost, I guess they're, you know, roughly 100 years old, a little over 100 years old. How's the maintenance done today on a ship or on a submarine? And how do those dry docks stay together? I mean, how do we not have them fall apart? I mean, that's old. Most things don't last that long.
So that's a lot of questions. Let's go to dry docks first.
Okay.
So dry docks in Hawaii are national assets.
Yep.
And they're there to stay, and if we don't take care of them, we're not going to be able to park ships. So we have 4 dry docks. One was built in the early 1900s, and the other 3 were built around World War II timeframe. Same concept, we took parts off. And if you walk the shops and the buildings, at the peak, I guess, of the size of the shipyard, there were 25,000 people. And it's almost like an industrial museum when you walk through and you see some of the cool stuff that this shipyard used to do. Had its own foundry, had its own forge, it made stuff. So today, and then we cut ships out and we build roll plate and put it back on. Today, because of the nature of the way we build the ships, we do a lot of the repair on the ships. So we don't like cut big sections of the submarine off, we repair in place. Mm-hmm. So the tanks, the valves, and a lot of those things that we repair on the ships, which is fundamentally different.
Okay. So we've transitioned, okay, we've gone from kind of, you know, blue collar, just cut a hole in the side of the ship to repair in place because the technology and the integrity of the vessel doesn't support cutting it open anymore. So it talks a little bit about the technology, and I know that you have some props here that you're dying to show us, and I think they're very interesting, and I think that our you know, the folks watching will enjoy watching this. So why don't you tell us about these 2 pipes that we have? Let's start with,
you can start with
the shipyard log, sure.
So we had talked about the relationship of Hawaiian culture with the shipyard. And so I just happened to have this. So the shipyard puts out a shipyard log, and Captain Klowski and his team do a great job. So you can see on the cover as an example of how we kind of bring Hawaiian culture, which is very unique to the naval shipyards.
Well, it's probably easy to do that because, I mean, my observation, it looks like a lot of folks are you know, from the island of Oahu or from Hawaii that work at the shipyard. And so doesn't that make it easier because you've got Hawaiians that want to bring their culture? And so for folks like us that are, you know, we're mainland haoles really. So it's an opportunity to kind of learn the culture and have it infused into what happens there.
Yeah, I would just, so being in Hawaii, being in a shipyard, and there's so many people that have either worked in the shipyard themselves, their parents, their grandparents, their neighbors, their aunties and uncles. The shipyard has an indelible place in Hawaii. So the workforce and the people of Hawaii, there's an extension, they're tied together. So it's not like we bring the culture in, the culture is just part of the ohana. So getting back to how we repair ships, we recognize that corrosion. Ships last longer today than they did 100 years ago for many different reasons. So we fix the ships in the dry docks, and our biggest problem is corrosion. So we have to fix the hulls, we have to fix the tanks, we have to fix those things. It's a problem that's not just endemic to submarines, but surface ships as well.
Yeah, you put a piece of metal in salt water, it's going to rust.
So the biggest cost driver behind fixing the corrosion is that when you think about the small space of a submarine, you have to basically build the hull and then you put all the stuff in it. Well, if you're going to go work on the hull, you have to take all that stuff out, and then you have to get to the hull. So it takes a lot of work just to get to the part where you're going to fix it. So it would be great if we didn't have to fix that stuff. So we have welding, but we also have this stuff called electroplating. Valve seats, connecting rods, those things that move under the high pressure systems that we have in the air and the hydraulics, and of course the systems that operate the control surfaces. That's a lot of big words and stuff, but there's, all right, so electroplating is putting metal back where it had corroded away or rubbed away, and then of course in the welding on the hulls. So I called it the bane of my existence was brush plating. We had a lot of talented folks who worked on this stuff, and it was such an inexact science in some of the places that we wanted to do this work that they would spend hours and hours and hours working on plating metal back. And then we did a tape test. You put tape over it and you lift the metal, and if it fit and it's set in the surface, then you have a good repair. Sometimes that the metal that you were depositing would just come off. So, and we had to take all this submarine apart to get to that point. So we worked on brush plating, and it was cumbersome process. If there was a way to heal the metal without this mechanical electroplating, we could save the Navy lots of money in not just these surface areas that we electroplate, but in the tanks where we have marine growth, in the heat exchangers, in a lot of these surfaces that are affected by the air-seawater interface.
Some kind of coating to protect it.
Yeah, some kind of coating,
Yep.
Exactly. So that takes me to my prop. As I was working on this idea of how do I replace electroplating with something that could heal itself, a local company wanted to partner with the shipyard, and a big Navy advocate, understood the issues of corrosion, an awesome firm right here in town that does research and development. So we had worked with them to show them the problem and say, hey, if you could come up with a way to heal metal from the inside, you could save the Navy not only money to fix things, but literally you could save the Navy operational time because it wouldn't have to spend as much time in maintenance.
Yep.
So I wanted to give you an example of what an application would look like from a technology perspective, and then we'll get into the recent change where the shipyard just became a lab.
Okay.
So if you want to hold this,
Sure.
I guess we got to put this
Okay,
right
we'll
here. So this is a typical pipe. You run fuels through it, you run seawater through it, it exchanges heat. But if this pipe were exposed to warm salt water, you get all those kind of great things that make scuba diving here awesome. But you don't scuba dive inside heat exchanger tubes, right? You want fish and stuff.
But you get marine growth in them, I know
You get
that.
marine growth. And it's calcified and it gets very hard and it reduces heat exchange and the flow rates and stuff like that. So if you just watch the water, see the water just flows out. Now over time, if this became a rusty pipe, if it became corroded, that flow rate would slow down, the heat exchange properties would change, and we would have to go in and change this pipe out.
And if you look at that pipe, if you look on the inside, you can see the water is still sort of adhered to the surface on the inside.
Right.
Yeah.
So now watch what happens when I do the same thing to this pipe. The water literally jumps off the surface, or appears to jump off the surface.
And it does not appear
And you can
to
see
even
where it's,
adhere.
kind of coalesced. So they changed the physical properties of the pipe by doing nanomolecular cladding to the surface.
Wow.
It's incredible research. They are working on being able to heal metal from the inside. So if I don't have to take the systems apart, I don't have to fix them, the corrosion rates go away, then I can operate my submarines without having to tear them apart and fix them. And maybe I get my submarines to last longer.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, that's a local, we won't say the company because we're not pitching anybody in particular, but
Right.
a local Hawaiian company that developed this.
Yes.
Unreal. Amazing. So, you know, to develop something like that, let's go back to when we first started this conversation. You know, when you talked about when you got out of high school and went to college, you had to figure out what you want to do when you grow up. So we still have, you know, the youth of America are facing that same, you know, decision matrix today as we did and as generations before us have. And I know that you spent a lot of time trying to increase the, you know, the focus on folks, particularly through partnerships with UH on STEM. It's a very popular word, science, technology, engineering, and math. So you want to talk a little bit about some of the work you did with UH on the STEM program?
Absolutely. I think I had a lot of fun in my command tour. And when I realized that I was responsible for growing my workforce, I was reaching out to UH, and Dr. Peter Crouch has done a great job partnering with the shipyard to provide us with qualified engineers I can bring right in the shipyard and train them up to work on these submarines and ships. It's an awesome mission in the Navy. But what we realized is that when you look at the nature of growing a workforce, and we have to cultivate the kids to understand why is this important. Because if you wait too long to become an engineer, it's an opportunity that's often missed. So I went out and I started talking to kids at the high school level and tried to create a bridge between things that kids love to do and the nature of what we do in the Navy from a technical perspective. And robotics was the coolest way to do that.
Yeah.
I've seen some kids that do some amazing stuff. And I'll tell you personally, I've been all jacked up watching some of these kids at these schools. It's really amazing. And I love to show them opportunities for what they do in their spare time and how it applies to what we do here in Hawaii so that they can grow up to be engineers. They can come work in the shipyard or work in the Navy as active duty and bring their forte, I guess, to a career that's exciting as well as fulfilling and lets them stay in Hawaii. So I have, and this is not to say that this is the only school, but this is a flyer from Marino. Perry Martin's done a great job with that school. And it is just one of many schools with many STEM programs, STEM, science, technology, engineering, math. It reaches kids in a way that shows them how the world is built around them.
Yeah, I heard a brief on this, and isn't this, it's kind of like when you go to college, I mean, they set up a curriculum where, you know, you're in almost like a major. Now, most kids, when they go to high school, the major is just get your degree, your diploma or whatever, but I mean, this one's geared specifically towards, you know, a technical major in high school, but I think they're, you know, the latest I've heard is they've gone from STEM to STEAM because, you know, they don't want to completely ignore the arts and the humanities. So I think they've tied that piece back in. But I think this is kind of the way of the future, and so it's giving people the opportunity to almost major in a technical thing in high school to prepare them for college, and you know.
So the real sin was STEM became an acronym. It just became a buzzword, and what engineers, a lot of them tend to be introverts.
Except yourself, of course.
There's a lot of non-introverted engineers. But to reduce the stigmatism of the engineer and the nerd.
Yes.
So engineers are often well-rounded. So you can be an engineer and you don't have to be one of those kids. I think engineering and math are for every kid. Yep. And it's not just for the smart kids, but all kids are smart. All kids can be engineers. And all kids can have a well-rounded background, and that's the STEAM.
Okay, and that's a great segue towards the end of our show. Ryan, I think you've done a great job sharing with us what the submarine force is like, what the maintenance piece is like, the opportunities that are available to kids through either STEM or at the shipyard through the apprentice program. And I want to thank you for being here. Again, my name is Jeff James. This is ThinkTechHawaii.com. Our show is The Military in Hawaii. We air every other Friday from 11 to 11:45, and I hope you come back 2 weeks from now. Aloha.